Life Happens is the podcast brought to you by 87%, the innovative digital platform that uses clinically designed assessments to make mental health tangible, allowing businesses and individuals to measure, understand, and improve their mental well-being. Hi everyone, I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and marketing director for 87%. And in this series, I have the enviable job of speaking to inspirational people from the worlds of adventure, business, intelligence, the military, sports, and more, to get their take on life's ups and downs, the setbacks that they've overcome, and how they've dealt with failure to get to be in the pinnacle of their sectors, all with the aim of helping you build positive mental health. This week, it's hard to sum up my guest's remarkable roller coaster life in a single paragraph, but I'll give it a go. A troubled childhood, a violent father, an abusive uncle, drug addiction in his early teens, a conviction for armed robbery at the age of 15, and a suicide attempt at 18. But if those early years were dark and troubled, he's been a beacon of light ever since, sober for over 13 years now. He's set up a successful business. He helps to mentor young offenders and addicts. He's written a best-selling book of his experiences. He hosts transformational retreats that use the power of change and is a devoted husband and father. He is a source of inspiration to many, myself included. I'm very excited to welcome to Life Happens, Michael Maisey.
Thank you, James. That is a pretty awesome intro. Thank you.
First and foremost, Michael, 87% is a mental health platform. It's important to ask, therefore, how are you?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's always a good place to start with that, to really check in with myself, is how am I feeling? How am I feeling? Feeling some excitement, some joy to be here with you, to be connecting again. Also feeling a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of fear. I've got to head into London tomorrow, leaving my wife and kids for 24 hours. I'm feeling that a little bit, like sort of, I've got to leave the nest for the first time, by the way, since September last year. So that's what I'm feeling right now in this moment. Tomorrow morning, I've got an early trip to London for some business stuff, and yeah, so that's me.
And is it the isolation away from the family, or is it the fact that you might be exposed to crowds, the underground, COVID, or a bit of both?
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that COVID doesn't exist, but I'm not too fearful around all of that stuff because I look after myself very well. Physically fit, I eat very well, I do breath work, I do ice baths. So I believe my immune system is strong enough to fight that sort of thing off. But it's more so just leaving my family, I know whenever I leave them, I miss them a lot. So naturally, when I've got a trip coming up where I'm going to leave them for 24 hours, I feel a bit of anxiety, a bit of fear that I know as I'm on the train going to London, I'm going to be feeling feelings of grief, really, sadness, like I miss them. I love the daily routine of getting up, making my daughter breakfast, getting her ready for school, taking her to school, being at the gate to pick her up at the same time every day, helping with dinner, helping with a bedtime routine. It's really boring, mundane stuff to a lot of people, but for me, that's the gold in life. That is the real stuff that I never had growing up and that I love to just be really in the middle of for my family.
And I mean, let's pick on that, because let's backtrack. I think we could fill several podcasts with your story. But you talk about not having these things growing up. Take me back to the Ivy Bridge estate and the memories that shaped your childhood.
Yeah, I grew up on Ivy Bridge estate in Isleworth, and I think for anyone who's been to Twickenham Rugby Stadium, and you look behind Twickenham Rugby Stadium, you see these big 2 tower blocks. Well, actually 4. That's where I grew up. I grew up on a council estate, very poor community. My dad was a heroin addict. My mum was an alcoholic from a traveller background. I experienced, neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse. My childhood was traumatic. That's all I knew, was that the people closest to you hurt you, and you can't trust the people closest to you. And I made this decision really young, as a young boy. Really, the final straw for me was after I was sexually abused by my uncle, was that this world isn't a friendly place. This is not a friendly place, this place that you're born into. And you have to be on guard. And that you have to create an adapted version of yourself. Otherwise, you're just not going to survive. So how does that manifest for a 5-6-year-old boy? I was a young, unpredictable, angry young kid. Because I knew if I was angry and unpredictable, the odds were you probably wouldn't want to be around me. And if you wasn't around me, that meant I was safe. Because after all, if my own primary caregivers would treat me this way, then what is the average person on the street going to do to me? So my defense mechanism was to be angry, unpredictable, to keep me safe. So that was my childhood, and the only safety I knew and found was around the age of 10, 11, 12, in a local gang on my council estate. And we were all young kids from very multicultural backgrounds, and most of our fathers weren't around, and crime, drugs, addiction, violence was part and parcel of our everyday life.
And I mean, God, it's those sort of fundamental ideas that children should expect. Is that the right word? Or should at least have, that the concept of love and family and you, that sort of passed you by. And I've heard you talk about. We'll come on to your book. I've read it. I'm very proud to say I have a signed copy. And you talk about becoming your own bodyguard. Talk to me about the process of sort of building that persona for your own self-protection.
Yeah. So I can explain this now, James, looking back in hindsight, having done years of therapy and self-development and getting sober. But what I'd done was I created a part of myself, and I call it the security guard. And the security guard basically took the scared little boy and he said, you stay there. And if anyone wants to get to the scared little boy, they have to go through me. And the security guard was a loud, angry, unpredictable person. And his job was to keep the scared little boy safe. After lots of trauma, abuse, physical violence, the security guard was like, that's enough. I'm running the show now. Anyone wants to get to him, you got to get through me. The problem with that, James, is that as I got older and the security guard became more and more a part of my daily existence, I started to believe I was the security guard. That's who you are. You're angry, you're loud, you're scary, you're unpredictable. And it took, a lot of pain to realize actually underneath it, I'm a scared little boy who just wants to be loved and nurtured and accepted. And that's what I can say this looking back in hindsight. But when I go into prisons now, I've volunteered in prisons for 13 plus years. That's what you meet. 99% of young offenders and criminals, and even the average criminal on the street, you'll meet their security guard. You're not meeting the scared little boy, but underneath and behind that security guard is a scared little boy whose dad left, or whose dad beat him up, or whose mum beat him, or was sexually abused. And that's been the essence of my work in the prison system with young offenders is, okay, take me to the scared little boy. I want to hear what he's got to say.
I was speaking to someone else recently, a mental health activist, who was saying that we're all suffering. We're all scared of something. Has that in hindsight, has that helped you deal with other difficult situations in your life, knowing that you have the ability to sort of shut these things out, or has that been detrimental to your character? Do you see what I'm asking?
No, I don't understand. Explain it a bit more for me.
So what I'm wondering is if that ability to create that security guard persona has obviously hardened you in specific situations. Has that made it easier for you to deal with difficult situations later on in your life, whatever those might be, being able to draw on those experiences, or has it made it harder because you're less sensitive, less able to communicate, less passionate, less loving?
Get it? Yeah. And I think at the time it did work. The security guard done a great job. He kept me safe. He kept me safe in prison. You know, the scared little boy wouldn't have survived in prison. So the security guard kept me safe. However, when I got sober and now I met my wife and she wants to get close to the little boy, and all I've got is the security guard who's saying, I'm not letting you near that little boy because the odds are you're going to hurt him just like everyone else hurt him. Now it's not serving me. It's not serving me anymore. And what I had to do, I went through this period of going, okay, let's just get rid of the security guard. And that didn't work. I had to have a real conversation with him and put him into a nice, comfortable retirement and say, I may call on you again, but for now, let the little boy come out. Let's hear from him. And that was the point in my life when I met my wife, where it was like, okay, now it's no longer serving me. Now I don't need to be on guard all the time. Now I can let this little boy come out and be heard and be held.
And be open and be vulnerable.
Yeah, be vulnerable, exactly. Because that's what it is. It's like, if I let you into this part of myself, which I feel fear, are you going to hurt me? Or even worse, are you going to see how messed up I am and reject me? And that's what the security guard's role was. It's like, I'm going to stop any pain getting through because this little boy's experienced enough pain. And at some point you have to let people into that pain. And that's what I'd done with my wife was, you know, look, in these beautiful, intimate moments where I should be happy, I'm terrified you're going to hurt me. And I'll tell you why, because every person in my life up until the age of 5 hurt me. Every person I thought I could trust hurt me or let me down in some way. So I've got a lot of evidence to back this theory up, that people closest to you hurt you. And that's what I'm banging up against every time we get close to each other. And it was a real beautiful moment of, I was convinced if I said that to her, she would reject me. And in fact, she felt so much closer to me because she thought it was just that I wasn't attracted to her anymore. That's why I was putting these walls up. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to hear that actually this is what you're battling behind the scenes on your own. And in that moment, I experienced for the first time in my life in, 28 years, I experienced intimacy for the first time where all of me was welcome with all of her.
That's beautiful. Yeah, my question wasn't particularly well worded, but that's exactly the answer. So, thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, yeah, and again, let's come back to the violent, angry youngster that emerged. That led you on to hard drugs in your teens. Was that escapism? Was that part of the persona? Was that something that reinforced that hard man image?
Yeah, I mean, I think culture played a big part in this as well, James. We grew up in a community where everyone listened to a certain type of music. It was like gangster rap was the music, and they promoted drugs and they promoted violence towards other people and towards the police. They promoted disrespecting women. And that played a part. I believe what your brain, what you feed your brain is just like what you feed your body. And we was feeding our brains as young kids, like gangster films, like Goodfellas, Menace to Society, and gangster rap. So all that was going in was negative, anger, violence, and drug taking, and everyone in our community just indulged in drugs. We didn't have a lot of money, but everyone sold drugs. That was their main source of income. So, you know, drug taking was just part of what we done in our community. Our parents done it. They drank and used drugs. And it was like we were just doing what everyone done. You know, it wasn't until I got sober and stepped away, I realized how abnormal it is for a 12-year-old boy to be taking crack and heroin at 12 years old. It's really not normal. But when I was in it as a young boy, it was just like normal. Everyone was doing it.
And is it similar for crime, I suppose? You know, was that because it was it normal in your world, or was that something that again you did to facilitate this security guard's, you know, hardened image?
So you see, in our community, James, there wasn't any father figures. All of them had left. Not all of them. Some of them were still around, but were in and out of prison or were drug addicts like my dad was. So in the absence of fathers, what the young boys do, they look for male role models. Subconsciously, we're always looking for that approval from elder men. We found it in the elder kids in our community. That's what we found, was that, you know, we looked at these elder kids who were selling drugs and committing crime, and they became our role models because that's all we had to look for. There was no elder men on our community saying, no, lads, let's try do this, try do, you know. So naturally we looked and thought that's what elder men do. They commit crime and they sell drugs and they're violent and they sleep with loads of women and they're disrespectful to women, and, you know, and I'm not blaming them for the choices I made. I made them choices myself, but that influence definitely played a part in the road I took.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if that's all you know, really, it's difficult to see. Well, it's difficult to know otherwise. But let's move forward you know, a year or so, and you find yourself in prison. You're in a state of mind where you the only option that you see for yourself is to end your own life. Talk me through the circumstances around that fortunately failed suicide attempt.
Yeah, so I spent most of my teenage years in a prison cell, a 4 foot wide prison cell, locked up for 23 hours a day. You know, and I went to prison 3 times, and on the third occasion when I went to prison, I went there as a fully blown heroin addict. You know, I came out of prison the second time, started selling drugs, and one of the drugs I was selling was heroin. Problem was I was taking a lot of heroin. When I went back to prison, I was fully addicted to it. So when I arrived at Felton Young Offenders and they said to me, we're putting you on the hospital wing, which is basically a prison wing, just with some hospital staff, and they come around and check your cell every 3 or 4 hours. And they said to me when I got there, you've got 2 choices of detoxing from heroin. It's like a long, drawn out process where you take all sorts of medication, or you can have a quick one. It flushes you out and we can get you back in with the general population in like 2 or 3 weeks. And me being the sort of young, tough guy, at least that's what I thought I was at the time, said, give me the quick one. And all I can say to you, James, is sort of 24 hours into it, it felt like I was experiencing what it would feel like to go to hell. Like hallucinations, boiling hot 1 minute, and then within seconds, freezing cold. So it would happen so quickly that the sweat would, by the time the sweat had dripped, it had gone from being boiling hot to like a freezing cold drip of sweat going down my. That's how quick it would happen. And, you know, I tried my best to ride that detox out. And in the end, I started flirting with the idea of suicide. And then it became a real viable option of yeah, I can't escape this cell, but I can escape this pain and misery by ending my own life. And that's what I'd done. You know, it's in that moment of desperation, I wrapped up my bed sheets, put them around the bars, and hung myself. And I tell you, I was so desperate to die, so desperate. But as soon as the noose tightened and yanked me up, it was like an instant regret. Almost, it was like instant. I was like, I don't want to die, and was struggling to pull it off. And it was a real sad, you know, 30 seconds, which felt like a really long time when you're hanging there, where you're slowly realizing it's pointless. What you're doing is pointless. It's done. And I thought of my mom. I thought of all the people who tried to help me, my brothers and sisters, and just felt sadness that, you know, despite all my sort of lame efforts to change, I couldn't be better than my dad.
I mean, that's a stark moment of realization, isn't it? But I mean, was that the transformational moment for you, or did your, I mean, obviously, you know, recovery is an ongoing process. I'm almost 5 years. You're 13 years. But was there like a light bulb epiphany moment where you thought to yourself, this has just got to end, this has got to stop? Or did that evolve over a period of time?
So what happened for me, and it wasn't like a light bulb moment, it was like an exorcism or a death. Part of me died. So on the hospital wing in a prison, and I hung myself in the middle of the night. It was like in early hours of the morning. But every 3 or 4 hours, the prison officer will go around every cell, and there's a little flap on the front of your cell door, and they'll just open the flap, look through the window, and just check you're still alive. And it was just at that time that the prison officer came in and checked and saw me hanging there. I was unconscious, and they come in, brought me back to life. And they carried me by my arms and ankles into a padded cell. All the walls are padded, the ceiling, everything's padded. The flush on the toilet is just a flat button on the wall, same as the buttons for the water. So you can't even smash your head off the tap. And I laid on the floor in the fetal position, having just been cut down from hanging myself. And I just cried. And I experienced, laying on that floor in a padded cell, a death. It was like a part of me died. It was like the security guard had died a slow, painful death in that padded cell. And what was left was a scared little boy. The little 5-year-old who was neglected, abused, beaten. And that for me, it wasn't a light bulb moment, but it was a death of maybe this isn't who you are, Michael. Maybe there's more here. You know, maybe you're not this tough guy. And from that rock bottom, complete emotional bankruptcy was a point where I could go, okay, there's only one way from here, and it's up. And I have to do whatever it takes if I want to have a different life.
There's something quite, I suppose, serene and beauty. I mean, yeah, perhaps the wrong word, but there's this beauty in that moment where that sort of, you know, that weight perhaps just lifted. You know, you've really had you cried for, you know, since the age of 5 before then, or was the security guard, did he not allow that? And, you know, was that then that easing, that did that facilitate the change?
It was more so when my mum, I hadn't really cried that much, no, But I cried a lot in that sort of 2 to 3 week period. Cried on the floor of the padded cell. And then my mum come to visit me in prison. So the prison called my mum. My mum didn't visit that much because she had other kids she had to look after. But they called my mum and said, your son nearly died. You should really come and see him. And she came, and I stumbled out. I had bruises all around my neck. And that was, it's funny, you know, I'm not a religious man, but I do believe in God, right? And it was like at the same time I was hanging there, my mum was in the process of going to AA and getting sober. So when my mum come to visit me, she said, you know, I didn't want to tell you this, Michael, until I was serious about this, but I'm sober. I'm about 3 months sober from alcohol, and I'm going to AA, and I'm trying to change. And in that moment, in the prison visiting room, which is normally a place where prison people like to act tough, they want to present to the outside world, this prison isn't phasing me. I'm running the joint. All this macho rubbish. But I just burst into tears. When my mum said I'm sober and I'm going to AA, I burst into tears because for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I could have one sober adult who has my back. And that for me was the sort of the icing on the cake. The security guard had sort of died. And now I had someone who I could rely on. And it was like, okay, maybe I can find a way out of this somehow. And that was it for me, you know, this sort of slow journey of recovery. You know, how do I change my life when I've got no GCSEs, I've got no money, I've got no job prospects, I've only got one person I can rely on who's only 3 months sober. And I started a journey which I didn't know at the time would lead me to where I am today. I would have happily settled for just a job and a regular income. But I didn't know getting sober and starting this journey of self-development would lead me to where I am today in Devon, 10 acres of land, 2 successful businesses, a best-selling book, a wife, and 3 kids who've never seen me drink or use drugs. Pretty incredible, man. I still got to pinch myself sometimes.
Oh, it's inspirational. But I mean, as you say, it's well, as they say, as we say, it's, you know, a day at a time. It's a step at a time. How do you find the motivation to stay on that journey? You know, how, for someone who is experiencing difficulty, a longevity of difficulty, how do you get up in the morning and think, right, I've just got to take that one little incremental gain, tiny little gain, so that tomorrow will be ever so slightly better, and then the next day will be ever so slightly better. But it's such a long, drawn out process. How do you sort of bring yourself to do that every day?
The truth is, it's not easy. That's the truth. You know, some days it's easy to get up and, you know, do a bit of self-care. Some days it's really difficult. Some days it's really easy, but all my family need me. So I got to be there for them. And that's been the sort of journey of my sobriety, is like, okay, before I had my family, my kids, it was quite easy. I could get up, I could go for a run when I wanted, exercise, meditate. And then 3 kids later and a wife and 2 businesses, it's like, okay, priorities need to change. Other people need me. And then it's sliding in the self-care around everyone else's diary, you know. And in reality, mate, it's not easy. But my motivation for doing it is that I want to be better than the men that went before me. I want to break the cycle. And I've done that in lots of ways already. But for me, it's really a daily practice, is like, what version of me are my family getting? Are they getting the tired, stressed out, overwhelmed version of me? Or are they getting dad at his best? Now, dad can't be at his best every day. But if I can be at my best 9 out of 10 days, then that's great. And I had to really ask myself, when I'm at my best, what is it that I do? And that's changed over 13 years. But for me, what works for me now is I do breath work, I do ice baths, I get out in nature, I do a bit of exercise, I meditate, I pray. They're all the things that make me the best version of me. So when I rock up to being a dad and being a husband, they're getting all of me, the best version of me. And you can't be that every day. Life's just impossible. But if you can be it as many days as you can, the chances are you'll make better life choices. And if you make better life choices, you're going to have a better life.
And I mean, I can't help notice the t-shirt. Having a family, having daughters that depend on you, having successful businesses, making the changes that you make for yourself, but for others, and we'll come on to your not for profit. But does that give you purpose? Does that allow you to live with purpose? Is that the relevance of the t-shirt?
The t-shirt is from a friend of mine over in America. He runs a sober house, and he sent me a t-shirt. So that was it, really. I mean, I love it. I love the message on it. But yeah, I think for me, it's about giving back. I think, once you've figured out your own little kingdom, once you've figured out your financial income, you got the house, you got your family. Once you've got everything in your realm in good order, then it might be a good idea for you to go to other people's kingdoms and say, maybe I can help you. And I think that's the big thing that, I'm about. It's like, okay, I'm not coming into your kingdom saying I can help fix yours when mine's a mess. I'm saying, look, my life's pretty good and pretty different to what it used to be. Maybe I can help you. And I believe that's my purpose. I believe, God's plan for me was always to put me through all this pain so I could come out the other side and use that lived experience to save other people's lives. And that's what I do, with my work in the prisons, and with the non-profit organization I set up called the CIP Project.
Tell us more about that, because I mean, it's a wonderful transformational initiative. You really are giving back. You're helping others. Tell us more about the CIP.
Yeah, so I volunteered in schools, colleges, prisons, all my sobriety, all over 13 years. And it was back in 2018 where I was like, I really want to make it more official so I can open it up for maybe potential funding, and I can do more consistent work in schools, colleges and prisons. And so I set up the CIP Project, and we run men's retreats for normal members of the public. We also run women's retreats now. And we run workshops in schools, colleges and prisons, which teach everything from emotional intelligence to how to live a better life, how to achieve the sort of life you want. And really the big stuff is the work in the prisons, because I believe the people who really need this work are the people who can't afford to pay to come to a workshop. And that's what I really am passionate about, is I offer bursary places to people who can't afford it to come on my retreats, and the work I do in the prisons is unpaid. It's all unpaid, all of this stuff. But for me, I believe in the law of karma. I believe you put good stuff out, it comes back round. And that's what I've held on to, all of my sobriety, is that if I continue to give, just keep giving it away, give it away. What you've got, give it away. And eventually it comes back around, and it's proved to be true, because I've got a really good life today.
And that's, yeah, I mean, congratulations, because it's such a wonderful story. Let's talk briefly about the app, the 87% app, if we can. You've had a quick play with it. The mantra that we believe in is that in order to make improvements in your mental health, you have to sort of understand where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. What have you got out of playing with the app, very, very, very briefly, and what do you do to sort of retain your awareness of how you're feeling?
Yeah, I think when I just want to say, any platform or app that helps you gain a better understanding of yourself and your mental health is a great thing, and there should be more of it, because certain apps might work for certain people. So I think that's what I gain from it, is that, you know, it gives you a tool. It's a practical tool to help you get a better understanding of yourself. What I do to help me is, at the moment, it's Zoom. We have the CIP Project run free weekly Zoom check-in groups where men can come and check in and bring all of themselves. And that's what works for me, is face-to-face, like eyeball to eyeball, bringing all of myself, really checking in with where am I at? So that's what works for me. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people would prefer an app, and I think it doesn't matter, you know, how you get there. If you just want to have a better mental health, it doesn't matter how you get there, whether it's an app or a check-in group or a men's retreat, whatever it is, just get there, you know.
Absolutely. We'll do a little plug of the book. You've got a couple of copies
Yeah,
there. This
I've got
is
a couple of copies for you, James, to give away to your listeners as you wish. So I'll personalize it and sign it, and just James will give me your details. I'll post it out to you.
incredibly kind, Michael, and I've read it. As I say, I've got a copy. I'm not ashamed to say it had me in tears of both laughter and anguish, I suppose is the word. Can't recommend it highly enough for anyone who is looking for a bit of hope, possibly a bit of inspiration that CIP change is possible. So do comment on the we'll put this on the screen on YouTube. Do comment on the video your thoughts, and we'll get a couple of signed copies out. That's very kind of Michael to agree to that. We'll finish off with a few quick fire questions that we ask all of our guests. Before we do that, is there anything else that you want to cover off that we haven't talked about, that people might, or that you'd like people to be aware of?
I think just one thing, because we've spoken about some pretty deep stuff here, and I think if anything has triggered anything within you and you want more support, you want to talk about it, then send me a message on Instagram and reach out, because with filming any podcast, we have a limited amount of time, so we can't go into all of the answers and solutions on everything. So if anything I've said about my childhood or anything has triggered anything in you that might need a bit more support, then reach out to me, and you know, I can try and support as I can.
There's one of the quick fire questions is you've just touched on, is how do people get in touch? Where are you? Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn? What's the best way?
Yeah, all of them. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Got a YouTube channel as well. So yeah, find me anywhere.
And it's at Michael Maisey. Is that right?
On Instagram, it's just my name, at Michael Maisey. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, let's do the quick fire. Is there anything, you sort of mentioned a couple of things, but is there anything that is an absolute non-negotiable that you do regularly to help your mindset or improve your mood?
Prayer.
What makes you good at what you do?
Humility.
What would you say to a young Michael?
It's not your fault.
Lovely, beautiful. And it could be a range of things, could be, you know, one, multiple, any ideas, people, things, books, places that you've taken inspiration from recently?
Sadhguru.
Wonderful. Listen, it's just so enlightening to speak to someone with such an inspirational, transformational story. Someone so willing to be open, who's obviously gone through such hardship and negativity, but has turned it into such incredible positivity, businesses, family. It's just absolutely, it's eye-opening, and I hope that people can see it for what it is, in terms of, you know, obviously there has been great sorrow in your life, but that's not what you don't dwell on it. You've sort of put that aside, and you use it actually to fuel that, fuel a positivity, and it's a great success story. So listen, thank you so much for sharing. It's been a joy and a delight to catch up again after it's been a bit too long. and wish you all the best with the trip to London and the rest of lockdown. I hope it goes well and the family are healthy.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me on, and well done on your 5 years, mate. Awesome.
Very kind. Thank you very much indeed.
Take care, buddy.
This is Life Happens, brought to you by 87%. I am so grateful to Michael for sharing his roller coaster story, and it just shows that no matter the circumstances, it's possible to build a mindset of positivity. I particularly loved his ideal of being the best version of yourself and it leading to better life choices. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure to subscribe and share it with your friends. We have loads more incredible guests lined up, as well as tips and exercises from our experts that will help you build positive mental health.